There is a version of a hospital that the daytime never shows you. The one that exists between 2 and 4 in the morning, when the visitors are gone and the administrative staff have cleared out and the building reduces itself to its essential function, the keeping of people alive in rooms where, sometimes, that effort fails. The corridors go quiet. The overhead lights run at their nighttime register, lower, more amber, casting the kind of light that makes familiar things look like approximations of themselves. The monitors beep. The ventilators cycle. And the staff who remain move through it all with the practiced calm of people who have learned to work in a space where the boundary between one state and another is closer than it is anywhere else. 3 nurses, 1 physician, and 1 security officer. 5 separate hospitals. 5 separate nights. A nurse on the 4th floor of a regional medical center in Ohio pressed the call button response on her panel at 2:41 a.m. and walked to room 307 and found the patient sitting upright in bed looking at her. She had checked that room 11 minutes earlier. The patient had been lying flat, breathing, sleep. When she got close enough to take his pulse, she understood that upright was the only thing he still was. A physician at a teaching hospital in Pennsylvania finished his notes at 3:15 a.m. and went to check on a patient he'd been treating for 4 days. The room was empty. The bed was made. When he asked the charge nurse about the transfer, she looked at him for a long time without speaking. Then she told him that room had been empty for a week. That no patient had been assigned to it since a woman named Margaret Cole had been discharged on a Tuesday. That he had never treated anyone in that room. And the last one. The security officer at a hospital in rural Georgia was doing his 3 a.m. corridor check on the oncology floor when he passed a patient he recognized. Older man. Room 412. He'd spoken to him twice during previous shifts. Brief exchanges, nothing consequential. He nodded at him in the corridor. The man nodded back. When he returned to the security desk, he pulled the floor census out of habit. Room 412. The patient had been discharged 2 days ago. Not transferred. Not moved to another floor. He had died. These are 5 accounts. 5 people who went to work and came home different than they left. By the time we reach the last one, I want you to sit with the question that all 5 of them have spent considerable time sitting with since. In a building full of people positioned at the threshold between living and not, what exactly comes through from the other side? The first thing Margaret noticed about room 307 on the night of February 11th was that the call light was on. This was not unusual. Call lights activate for any number of reasons on a night shift. Patients need water, need repositioning, need reassurance that the sound they heard was just the ventilation system and not something else. Margaret had been a registered nurse for 9 years, the last 4 of them on the medical surgical floor of a regional hospital in central Ohio, and she had answered several thousand call lights without incident. She finished charting the note she was in the middle of, stood, and walked the 40 feet of corridor to room 307. She pushed the door open. Gerald Marsh, 71 years old, admitted 3 days earlier for post-surgical monitoring following a hip replacement, was lying in his bed exactly as she had left him on her last check 40 minutes ago. Flat. Eyes closed. The shallow, even respiration of someone in light sleep. His foreline was intact. His monitoring leads were in place. The cardiac monitor beside his bed showed a normal sinus rhythm, the green line tracing its familiar peaks and valleys across the screen. She looked at the call button on the bed rail. The patient-facing button, the one Gerald would have needed to press to activate the light at the nursing station. It was in its normal position, on the rail, not in his hand. She looked at Gerald. He hadn't moved. She reseated the call button in its cradle, confirmed his vitals with a quick visual check, and went back to the nursing station. The call light for room 307 came on again at 2:23 a.m. She walked back. Gerald was in the same position. Flat, eyes closed, respiration even, cardiac monitor reading normal sinus. The call button was on the rail. His hands were at his sides, outside the blanket, clearly not in contact with the button. Margaret stood in the doorway for a moment. It was possible, not common but possible, for the call button circuitry to false activate. Faulty connection, low battery in the remote unit, any number of mundane technical explanations. She made a note to have the unit checked in the morning. She silenced the light at the panel in the room. She looked at Gerald again. Something made her walk fully into the room. She could not have articulated in that moment what it was. An instinct that 9 years of night shifts had encoded at a level below conscious reasoning, the accumulated reading of 10,000 patients, the pattern recognition of a professional who has learned to notice things that don't yet have a name. She approached the bed. She looked at Gerald Marsh's face. His eyes were closed. His expression was neutral, the slack, unguarded quality of a sleeping face. His chest rose and fell with the regularity that the monitor confirmed. Everything looked exactly the way it had looked for the past 4 days. She placed 2 fingers on his wrist. The pulse she had expected to find was not there. She repositioned her fingers. Pressed harder. She moved to his neck, the carotid, which is never absent in a living person if the cardiac monitor is showing rhythm. The monitor was showing rhythm. There was nothing at the carotid. She looked at the monitor. Normal sinus. She looked at Gerald Marsh. She took his wrist again and pressed and held her breath and listened with her fingers. Nothing. She called the code at 2:26 a.m. The response team arrived within 90 seconds. The physician leading the code checked the monitor, checked the leads, checked the patient, and within 45 seconds called it. Gerald Marsh had been dead for some time. The attending estimated between 30 and 60 minutes based on the physical indicators, which placed the time of death somewhere between 1:30 and 2 a.m. before the first call light activated. The cardiac monitor had shown normal sinus rhythm for 30 to 60 minutes of a dead patient. This was investigated. The monitor was pulled and tested. It was functioning correctly. The leads were checked, all properly attached, all reading correctly. The waveform recorded in the monitor's memory was analyzed by a biomedical engineer who worked with the hospital's equipment vendor. The waveform was valid. The recording showed a real cardiac rhythm. The engineer said this in his written report and added, in a handwritten note at the bottom of the document, that he had no explanation for how a functioning monitor attached to a deceased patient produced a valid cardiac rhythm for a minimum of 30 minutes. The report was filed. Margaret was cleared of any clinical error. The case was closed. She is still a nurse. She has worked nights for 4 more years since that February. She has answered hundreds of call lights in those 4 years, and she will tell you that she still walks fully into every room, still places her fingers at the wrist before she accepts what a monitor tells her, still spends an extra moment looking at faces in the way she learned to look at Gerald Marsh's face a fraction of a second too late. The one thing she cannot resolve, the one detail that her clinical training has no framework for, is the call light itself. Gerald had been dead for up to 60 minutes before the first activation. His hands were at his sides outside the blanket, not in contact with the button. Something had activated it. Whatever it was, it tried twice before she finally came. Dr. Elliot Ferris had treated the woman in room 214 for 4 days. He knew her name, Catherine. She told him to call her Catherine on the first morning, with the particular directness of an elderly woman who has decided that last names belong in formal correspondence and nowhere else. He knew her history, 78 years old, admitted through the ER with acute pneumonia on a Monday, complicated by a cardiac arrhythmia that had required aggressive management for the first 48 hours before stabilizing. He knew her preferences. She wanted her curtains open during the day, wanted her room dark at night, did not want the television on under any circumstances and would tell you so. He knew the sound of her voice, the specific quality of her humor, the way she held his gaze when he spoke to her with the focused attention of someone who takes information seriously and intends to act on it. He had visited room 214 at the start of every shift for 4 days. He had written notes. He had ordered medication adjustments. He had spoken to her daughter on the phone twice, a woman named Denise who called every morning from somewhere in Michigan and asked precise, prepared questions. On the 5th day at 3:15 in the morning, he went to room 214 to check on her. The room was empty. Not recently vacated, not the organized disarray of a patient recently transferred, the 4 poles still in place, the personal items not yet cleared. The room was clean and made. The bed was tight-cornered and freshly covered in the particular way that hospital housekeeping makes a bed when a room is going back into rotation. The whiteboard on the wall where patient information was written had been erased and wiped. The room smelled of the disinfectant that gets used between occupancies. Elliot stood in the doorway for a moment. He checked the room number on the door. 214. He looked at the empty, made bed. He walked to the nursing station. Told the charge nurse, a woman named Brenda who had been on this floor for 16 years and who Elliot respected completely, that he needed to know what had happened with his patient in 214. Whether she'd been transferred, whether she'd deteriorated, what had occurred. Brenda looked at him. It was the look that he has described to 2 colleagues in the 3 years since this happened. Not a look of confusion, which would have been appropriate, but a look of careful professional assessment, the kind of look someone gives you when they are deciding how to respond to something that doesn't fit any available category. Room 214 has been empty since Thursday, Brenda said. We had a patient come in Monday, Mrs. Whitfield. She was here for 2 days, went home Wednesday morning. No one since then. Elliot told her about Catherine. He said the name, the age, the admitting diagnosis. He described her. He referenced the daughter in Michigan, the no television policy, the arrhythmia management. Brenda listened to all of it. When he finished, she said, Elliot, I've been the charge nurse on this floor every night this week. Room 214 has been empty. I have no record of the patient you're describing. He asked for the room assignment logs. She pulled them. Room 214, Mrs. Whitfield, admitted Monday, discharged Wednesday morning. Nothing before. Nothing after. He asked for his own charts. She pulled his charting records for the week. Room 214 did not appear in any of them. 4 days of visits. 4 days of notes and medication orders and phone calls from a daughter in Michigan. None of it existed in the system. None of it appeared in any record, under any patient name, in any chart associated with his credentials. He asked the biomedical department whether the room's call system had any activation records for the past 4 days. They checked. Nothing. He called Denise. The daughter's number was still in his phone. He was certain of this. He had put it there himself on the first evening when she'd called, and he'd suggested she call his direct line with questions. He dialed it. The number was not in service. He sat in a consultation room for 45 minutes before he returned to work. He has never written about this publicly, has never reported it through any official channel, because there is no channel designed for what he is describing. He continued his career. He is currently a practicing physician. He told me that what disturbs him most is not the missing records. It's Catherine herself, the 4 days of interaction, the texture of her personality, the sound of her voice. The way she'd said, "Call me Catherine," on the first morning with that particular directness. These are not the products of hallucination. He knows hallucination. He has studied it, treated it, observed it at clinical range. This was not that. 4 days of a patient who left no record of existing. And somewhere in Michigan, a phone that can no longer be reached by a number he is still, 3 years later, completely certain he dialed. The patients who unsettle nurses the most are rarely the sickest ones. The sickest ones follow a clinical logic. Deterioration, intervention, response, the terrible grammar of medicine that at least has syntax. The ones who unsettle are often the stable ones. The recovering ones. The ones who should be fine. Who, by every measurable indicator, are fine. But who have something in their eyes during night rounds that is not quite in keeping with fine. Room 118 was a 53-year-old man named Paul, admitted for monitoring following a minor cardiac event, stable and scheduled for discharge in the morning. Teresa had been his assigned nurse for 2 consecutive nights and had found him unremarkable, polite, uncomplaining, a man who asked for water occasionally and thanked her and went back to watching the overnight news. On the second night, at 3:15 a.m., he was awake when she came for her check. Sitting up, not distressed, but with the wide-eyed alertness of someone who had not slept and did not intend to. "I've been hearing things," he said. Teresa did a quick scan. His monitors were reading normally. His color was good. She checked his drip. "What kind of things?" "The people in the other rooms," he said. "Talking." The floor was quiet. It was generally quiet at this hour. Night sedation, exhaustion, the particular stillness of a ward at 3 a.m. She told him this gently. Told him sound traveled strangely in hospitals. Told him it was probably the HVAC system or a television somewhere. The woman 2 rooms down, Paul said. She's been talking to someone. The same name. Over and over. He paused. Michael. She keeps saying Michael. She doesn't sound frightened. She sounds like she's somewhere else. Teresa stood still for a moment. 2 rooms down was room 116. A 69-year-old woman named Rosemary, admitted for a stroke evaluation. Rosemary had been unconscious since admission. Fully unresponsive, confirmed by neurology 3 times in 2 days. She had not spoken. She was not capable of speech in her current condition. I'll check on her, Teresa said in the careful neutral tone she used when a patient said something that required management rather than engagement. Is there anything I can get you? Something to help you sleep? Paul looked at her. The man at the end of the hall, he said. He's been quiet for a while now. Since about 2. The room at the end of the hall was room 109. A 74-year-old post-operative patient named Harold. Harold had been quiet since about 2, as Paul had noted, because Harold's family had been called at 1:47 a.m. when his condition deteriorated and he had died at 2:09 a.m. after a brief and ultimately unsuccessful intervention. The room had been closed since then, pending family arrangements. Paul could not have known any of this. The door to his room opened onto a corridor where room 109 was not visible. No announcement had been made. There was no external indicator of what had happened at the end of the hall. What else have you been hearing? Teresa asked. Her voice was controlled. Paul looked at her with an expression she has never found the right word for. Not knowing, not performative. Something more uncomfortable than either of those. The expression of a person reporting something they have not asked to receive and do not know what to do with. The boy on the floor above, he said. Pediatric. He's been crying since about midnight. His name's Danny. He's scared because his parents went home and he doesn't understand why they left while he was sleeping. He paused. He's not sick anymore. He's just scared. Teresa left the room. She checked on room 116. Rosemary was unconscious as she had been. Silent. No change. Teresa stood in the doorway for 30 seconds and heard nothing. She went to the nursing station. She pulled the census for the pediatric floor above. There was a patient named Daniel admitted 2 days ago, a 7-year-old recovering from an appendectomy, doing well. His parents had gone home at 10 p.m. at the nurse's suggestion because the boy was stable and sleeping. She called the pediatric station. Asked if the boy in Daniel's room had been upset tonight. The overnight nurse paused and said yes. He'd woken up around midnight frightened, took about 40 minutes to settle. He'd been asking for his parents. Teresa went back to room 118. She stood in the doorway. Paul, she said carefully, how are you hearing these things? He looked at her. I don't know, he said. It started last night. The second night here. He looked at the window, at the dark rectangle of glass and the parking structure beyond it. I think this place is loud in a way that other places aren't. I think I'm just close enough to it now that I can hear it. He paused. I don't know what I mean by that. Teresa has described this to one person, a colleague with 12 years of night shift experience who did not dismiss her and did not offer an explanation and sat with it for a long moment before asking whether Paul had said anything else. He had. One more thing at the end of the visit as she was leaving. The room you pass on your way back to the station, he said. Room 112. The woman in there. She's going to need you in about 20 minutes. Teresa checked room 112. The patient, a 62-year-old woman recovering from abdominal surgery, was asleep and stable, all vitals normal. 22 minutes later, her blood pressure dropped. The intervention was fast enough to be effective. She was fine. Teresa has never reported any of this officially. Paul was discharged the following morning without incident. His chart reflects a routine 2-night monitoring stay with no complications. She has kept one detail out of every account she's given. Paul's last words before she left his room for the final time that night. Not a prediction, not a description of something he was hearing. Something else. He told her to tell the man in the gray coat that it was time to come in from the corridor. There was no man in a gray coat on her floor that night. She checked. What Victor knew about the patient in room 412 was small but specific. His name was Raymond Carroll. He was 67 years old. He had a laugh that started before whatever was funny had finished, a genuine preemptive laugh that suggested a man who was always slightly ahead of the joke. He had been on the oncology floor of St. Augustine Regional for 11 days when Victor first met him during a routine overnight corridor check, and in the 3 weeks of Victor's shifts that followed, they had spoken perhaps a dozen times, brief exchanges, hospital small talk, the kind that accumulates into something like familiarity without quite becoming friendship. Victor had been a hospital security officer for 6 years. He was 42, careful, methodical, the kind of man who checked things twice not because he was anxious but because he had learned that the second check was where errors went to hide. He liked the night shift. He liked the particular quiet of a hospital at 3 a.m., the reduced population, the simplified version of a building that the overnight hours produced. He had seen difficult things in 6 years. He was not naive about what a hospital contained after midnight, but he had a stable relationship with those things. He understood his environment. On a Tuesday in March at 3:07 a.m., he was doing his standard corridor circuit of the oncology floor when he came around the corner of the north wing and saw Raymond Carroll walking toward him. He was in a patient gown and hospital-issue socks, moving with the slow, deliberate gait of someone carrying pain he had made his peace with. He was looking at the floor, not at Victor, his hands loosely at his sides. "Mr. Carroll," Victor said. The man looked up, and Victor had a moment, brief, sub-second, of something that he has described as a stutter in his own perception. Not a visual stutter. A cognitive one. The fraction of a second before recognition fully assembled itself where the image in front of him and the name he'd spoken didn't quite align. Then it passed and it was Raymond Carroll. It was his face and his posture and the particular slight forward lean he walked with, and Victor fell in beside him. "Late for a walk," Victor said. Raymond looked at him. He did not say anything. He looked at Victor with an expression that was, and this is the word Victor uses consistently in every account, careful. As if he were choosing something. As if the moment required more precision than the moments Victor was used to operating in. "I'm just walking," Raymond said. "Let me walk with you a bit," Victor said. "Then we'll get you back." Raymond looked forward. They walked the corridor together for perhaps 20 feet. Then Raymond stopped. He stopped and he turned and he looked at Victor with that same careful expression, and Victor has said that in that moment he felt something he cannot classify clinically or professionally, the physical sensation of being looked at by someone who was looking from a greater distance than the space between them suggested. The sense of depth in the look. More depth than a corridor should have contained. "You should check on room 408, Raymond said. "Mrs. Okafor. She's been trying to reach the call button and she can't quite get there." Victor noted it. He told himself he'd check 408 after he walked Raymond back to his room. He walked Raymond back to the north corridor. Raymond turned toward his room. Victor turned toward 408. He heard the call button chime from inside 408 before he reached the door. Mrs. Okafor, 71, had woken from a dream and reached for the call button and, due to recent weakness in her right hand, had knocked it to the floor. It was resting 6 inches from her bed, blinking on the linoleum, and she had been awake for 11 minutes trying to determine how to reach it. Victor handed it back to her. He checked her vitals. He called the floor nurse to do a full check. He stood in the doorway for a moment after the nurse arrived, thinking about what Raymond had said. The specific detail of it, the name, the room, the precise description of a situation that Raymond had no visible mechanism for knowing. He walked to the nursing station. He pulled the oncology floor census. Room 412. Carol Raymond. Age 67. Discharge date March 8th. Victor looked at the date on his phone. March 10th. He looked at the census entry. The discharge date notation. He looked more carefully. Raymond Carroll had not been transferred. He had not been moved to another floor, another facility, a rehabilitation center. The notation beside his name was 3 letters that Victor had seen on census records before and had a consistent meaning in every hospital he had worked in. December. Deceased. March 8th. 2 days ago. Victor stood at the nursing station for a long moment. Then he walked back to the north corridor. He stopped outside room 412. The door was closed. He stood there with his hand on the door handle for what he estimates was 2 full minutes. Then he went back to the nursing station and he completed his incident report for the evening, which recorded the activation of the call button in room 408 and the assistance rendered to the patient within. It did not record the conversation in the corridor. He has worked the oncology floor 31 times since that March. He does Raymond Carroll's corridor check every shift. Not a formal protocol. Not a documented procedure. A personal one. Room 412 has housed 4 different patients since March. Victor checks on all of them. He checks on 408 every pass without fail. Raymond told him to. The last account is the one I've spent the most time with. Not because it is the most dramatic, it isn't, not on its surface. It is quiet. It is the quietest of the 5. It happens almost entirely in a single room on a single night, between a nurse named Diane and a patient named Helen, and it doesn't announce itself. It builds the way real dread builds, through accumulation, through the patient assembly of details that individually mean nothing and together mean that something is wrong in a way that cannot be undone once it is understood. Diane had been a night shift ICU nurse for 15 years. She was not given to flights of interpretation. She had a precise, grounded relationship with her work and with the environment she performed it in, and she would have been the first person to tell you, had told other people many times, that the mythology of hospital horror was mostly the product of exhaustion and pattern-seeking in high-stress circumstances. She did not dismiss the experiences of colleagues who reported unusual things. She simply had a high threshold for what qualified as unusual in a building where people died regularly and the nights were long and the human mind under sustained stress was capable of remarkable confabulations. She has revised this position. Helen was 83 years old. She had been in the ICU for 6 days following a hemorrhagic stroke that the attending neurologist had described on admission as catastrophic. She was intubated. She was on a ventilator. She had no purposeful movement, no response to stimuli, no measurable cortical activity on the EEGs run on days 2 and 4. Her family, a son named David and a daughter named Patricia, had been spoken to honestly on day 3 about the trajectory of the situation, and they had requested the continuation of supportive care while they made arrangements to be present together. Helen had not spoken since before the stroke. She was not capable of speech. She was intubated. Diane came on shift at 11 p.m. on the 6th day and was assigned to Helen's room, as she had been for 2 of the previous nights. At 11:47 p.m. Helen's voice said, "Are you the night nurse?" Diane was checking the ventilator settings at the side of the bed. She stopped. She looked at Helen. The endotracheal tube was in place, secured with tape, connected to the ventilator circuit. Helen's eyes were closed. The monitor above the bed showed no change from baseline. The ventilator was cycling. The settings were unchanged. There was no mechanism by which an intubated, non-responsive patient could produce speech. Diane stood completely still for 4 seconds. She checked every piece of equipment. She checked the monitor. She checked the tube. She checked the room, the door, the window, the corridor visible through the glass panel beside the door. Empty. She sat down in the chair beside the bed and she held very still and she did not call for anyone because she did not yet know what she would call them to. At 12:14 a.m. Helen's voice said, "David's coming in the morning." Diane looked at her. Helen's face was still, her eyes closed, the expression of a face that has been still for days. The ventilator cycled. The monitor traced its unchanged waveform. David was coming in the morning. Diane knew this. It was in the family notes. It was why the night charge nurse had left a specific briefing about managing the morning transition. This was information Diane had. Information that could, with enough effort, be rationalized as her own mind externalizing something she already knew, in the disorienting circumstances of a very quiet 12 a.m. ICU room. She told herself this. At 1:02 a.m. Helen's voice said, "Patricia's afraid to see me like this. She hasn't been able to come." Diane did not speak. She was sitting in the chair and she was looking at Helen's still face and she was doing the thing she had trained herself to do in difficult clinical moments. Maintaining function, maintaining presence, not catastrophizing. She was controlling her breathing. Patricia had not visited. David had come twice. Patricia had called every day and had told the charge nurse on day 4, in a brief and clearly painful conversation, that she was struggling with seeing her mother in this condition and was working up to coming in. This was also in the family notes. This was also, therefore, information Diane possessed. She sat with these explanations and she held them and she let them do their work. At 1:39 a.m. Helen's voice said, "Tell Patricia I know. Tell her she doesn't have to apologize." Diane got up. She walked to the glass panel beside the door and looked out at the ICU corridor. Empty except for the night staff at the nursing station 40 feet away, going about their work. She looked back at the room. Helen in the bed, still, intubated, unchanged. She sat back down. "Helen," she said. Her voice was steady. "Can you hear me?" Nothing. She sat with this for a long time. At 2:55 a.m., the monitor above Helen's bed began the change that Diane had been trained to recognize, the subtle, progressive deterioration of the waveform that precedes cardiac decompensation. She was calling the code before the alarm triggered. The team arrived. They worked for 19 minutes. Helen died at 3:14 a.m. Diane has gone over the acoustic facts of that night many times. An intubated patient cannot produce speech. The endotracheal tube physically precludes the use of the vocal cords. This is not a matter of debate or interpretation. It is anatomical fact. Whatever she heard in that room between 11:47 p.m. and 2:55 a.m. did not come from Helen's body in any mechanism that medicine accounts for. She has told this to 2 people. She told a colleague who sat with it seriously and said nothing for a long time and then said that they believed her. She told a chaplain who asked her afterward what the voice had sounded like. She said it sounded like a woman who knew where she was going and had a few things left to say before she got there. She delivered the message. She told Patricia, in the quiet, careful conversation that happened in the family room while David held his sister's hand, that her mother knew. That Patricia didn't have to apologize. She said it came from the nursing staff. She let Patricia believe the source was a human one. Patricia cried for a long time and then said thank you, and the thank you was the specific quality of thank you that is directed at something larger than the person delivering the message. Diane has worked the night shift for 4 years since. She has not heard anything similar. She does not expect to. She thinks, and she offers this carefully as a person who does not make claims beyond her evidence, that what she heard was specific. That it was not a broadcast but a narrowcast. That it was intended for that room on that night, through whatever improbable channel made it available. She thinks that the hospital at 2 a.m. is loud in ways that the daytime cannot hear. That what Paul said in room 118 of a different hospital on a different night is something she now understands. That in a building full of people at the boundary itself sometimes speaks. The question she cannot resolve. The question that all 5 of them share, across 5 hospitals and 5 nights and 5 accounts that have no bureaucratic record and no official resolution, is not whether they experienced what they experienced. It's what it means that this has been happening every night in every hospital for as long as there have been hospitals. That the night shift has always known about it. That the nurses and the physicians and the security officers who have worked these hours have always known, and have carried it without a language for it, and have shown up the next night anyway. Because someone has to be there. Because the building keeps running. Because the lights stay on. And because at 3 in the morning somewhere in this country right now, a call light is activating in an empty room. And someone is getting up to answer it. If this unsettled you, you're not alone.